Well, I mean, a big part of what we're doing at Tact is just explaining what, inclusion and neurodiversity looks like too. I mean, it's when you go out and you talk to people, you will regularly meet somebody that, has a child with autism or family member, a neighbor. 154 people, you don't have to look too far before you recognize that, individuals with autism are throughout our entire community. But people still, look at it in the sense that it's like this hidden group that they don't recognize as a group that's underserved or not recognizing the full ability of their potential.
Are you looking for ways to shorten your marketing learning curve and help your organization survive and thrive? Welcome to Relish This, the Purpose Marketing Podcast, a show for purpose-focused leaders who want to use marketing techniques to fuel their organization's growth. If you're a returning listener and you haven't subscribed already, we'd love to have you. Also, please consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Now here's your host, author and marketing specialist, Stu Swineford.
Hey, Relish This podcast listeners, Stu here. Thanks for listening to the show. Does your organization sometimes struggle with messaging and you know you have a great story and you know it should resonate, but for whatever reason, it's just not landing? Sometimes that can just be a matter of shifting the position and twisting the narrative just a bit to make sure that it's coming at people from a perspective of their needs and their challenges and their desires. And what happens is we get so used to telling our story a certain way that we don't do a fantastic job of understanding who the audience is and what might be motivating them. And my guest today is Danny Combs, and he is the founder of Tact, which is this really great organization in the Denver area that helps kids in the autism spectrum find work and get skilled training in those areas that they're really interested in. We had a really great conversation. I will warn you that we did have some technical challenges at one point, so hopefully we're able to smooth those out. But this is a really fun episode, and I hope you enjoy it. And here we go. Hello, Danny. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I am great. I really appreciate you jumping on our podcast here at Relish This. I'm really looking forward to learning more about what you are up to at Tact. It seems like it's something that is very needed, and I'm excited to chat with you about it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to share.
Yeah. So how did Tact come about?
It's a great question. So it was actually kind of, my son was the inspiration in Tact. We started it in 2016. And I kind of like telling the story, so I appreciate you asking. My former life, I was a professional musician and got to do music for a living and got to play with a whole bunch of fun people in Nashville and was pretty successful in that. And, naturally, I'm fourth generation trades. My great grandfather worked in aerospace. My grandfather worked in aerospace. My dad was a general contractor. So when you're fourth generation, you naturally pick up a guitar, right? And move to Nashville.
Sure.
That's what I did. And it worked out pretty great. And my son that I ended up having in Nashville just changed my life. He's kind of the center of my world. And about 2 years old, started noticing, some unique things that kind of made him extra special. And later came to discover that those things were called autism. And even before he could say, "Hello, Dad, I love you," anything like that, he was creating and visualizing and manufacturing these amazing things out of cardboard and doing these amazing drawings. And it just became apparent that he was very good at kind of my family background of the trades, and started looking into, skills-based, trades-based programs as he got bigger, and dove in and found that, autism had the highest unemployed rate group in the country at 90% unemployment rate. And, started spending all this money in all these different therapies and kept getting, your son needs to do this or he needs to do that better, and never recognizing, hey, can you see these amazing things that my son is doing? Mm-hmm. And I had the chance to meet Dr. Temple Grandin and said, hey, I've got this idea for a trades program. So this is what my son's good at for kids with autism, and maybe it would lead towards jobs. And she was like, you need to stop what you're doing and do this right now.
That sounds a lot like Temple Grandin. Yes.
Exactly. So we just joke that we do it because that's what Temple told us to do. I mean, that was the push I think that I needed to, put down the guitar and pick up a hammer and do this full time. And so we launched in 2016, and it just blew up. I mean, it's just taken off. So we ended up getting our 501c3 really quickly. We, within 6 months, had secured a space. Within a year, had secured $500,000 to get started. And it's just been, ever since then, just taking off. And now we've served hundreds of kids. We're getting kids jobs all the time and kind of bucking the trend of that 90% unemployment rate, trying to make a real tangible difference in a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I know that, Asperger's and autism and that whole spectrum discussion is certainly just so interesting because, people's brains just work a little differently. And, and yet they get left behind quite a bit of the time. And so it's really cool to hear that you have such a great program going. Now, when you talk about creating jobs for kids, is it training leading up to their kind of adult life, or how does your program work in that capacity?
That's a great question. We always find that, when you're here at Tact, you kind of see the magic, but finding the words to like put it in place to help people understand is really tricky. But we have a couple different programs, and the idea is we start kids young in exposure and experience. And obviously, we're not putting welding torches in 5-year-olds' hands or, putting wrenches in their hands where they're working under cars on engines and transmissions. But we're creating opportunities to expose, younger kids to the trades. They do small little woodworking projects or computer projects, textile arts types projects, and get them interested in the idea of, hey, this is fun to make things, to fix things. And then once they get older and they get into kind of that high school transition age or young adult age, then all of a sudden we can work more in depth with them and kind of develop that skill in a variety of different trades, from welding to auto mechanics and carpentry, electrical work, and then get them placed within that. So they come here, they are very hands-on, strengths-based, project-based training where we're kind of keeping the class sizes small. Despite the fact that we have hundreds of students, we never have more than 6 kids per class. We have an authentic 3-to-1 ratio. A lot of training programs will, count administrators or, the people answering the phones or the bookkeeper or whatnot. That's not what we do. There's genuinely, one teacher for every 3 clients or students that we have in, which makes it pretty special. And then we can really differentiate and kind of create an individual pathway. And we create this training program. We go through all of the different things that employers are looking for. And then we work with a whole bunch of different employers and place that client into a job, and not just a job, but an actual career that leads towards a future.
Yeah, that's great. So you're basically looking for areas in which certain kids have different affinities or attractions to, and then helping them kind of explore those areas of interest in order to build a career in that space.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. We're identifying those strengths and we're nurturing that and kind of then guiding that individual towards a career with employers that recognize it and need it. And that's the thing within the skilled trades right now. Nationally, everywhere, there's a labor shortage, right? And especially within the skilled trades. But one of the things we pride ourselves off is that when these clients get placed in these jobs, they're really good paying jobs with no debt. And you think of, in Colorado, for example, for years, they were actually had the ability to have sub minimum wage. So it's like, well, shoot, how is that still such a thing as sub minimum wage for our community, even for those that are employed? Our students, when they graduate and get jobs, they're making really good money and in jobs that have advancement and opportunity to have like genuine independence and financial stability. And that's what we're trying to do, is like make it something that looks different than the other models. They're not apprenticeships. They're not internships. These are careers that we're developing with kids and actually making real futures.
That's great. So in terms of your model, you're a 501c3, so a nonprofit entity, but what's your revenue model?
It's varied and it's really diversified. As a parent of a child with autism, we want anybody from any socioeconomic background to be able to come to Tact. There is no fee for service for our career tracks program in the sense where parents are expected to pay out of pocket. There might be for a period of time until we can secure funding, but the idea is that we work with federal grants, local grants, foundations, donors, corporations, and they all create these scholarships. Over the last 5 years, we've created over $1.7 million in scholarships for students to come to our programming, get the education they need, and then step into employment. And in Colorado, for example, the average family spends about $100,000 a year in autism services.
Hmm.
median household income is $53,000. That's just crazy to think that autism services alone could be twice the median household income.
Right.
It's impossible for families to create the opportunities that their child needs. And so at Tact, we want to be that place that if you want your child, or if you're that individual that wants that opportunity, we're going to make it possible for you.
Well, and plus you're creating these career opportunities where in the past, if there's a 90% unemployment rate, then those parents are continuing to, have to take care of those children, possibly throughout their lives.
Oh my
Correct?
gosh, yes. I mean, that's the thing. When I started this as a dad, you start looking at that and you're like, is this what I want for my son? Is this, the reaching the fullest potential of all he has to offer, and recognizing that heck no, it does not. There's an opportunity out there for everybody. And, one of the things we like to do is serve the entire spectrum. So here at Tact, we have students that use alternative forms of communication. We
Mm-hmm.
have students that would, I don't like the word terms high functioning, but, they would traditionally use, the Asperger's type language that we don't use
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. But we've got the full spectrum of people here, and we try to find an opportunity for everybody, and it's working.
Ah, that sounds great. I know that there are lots of great programs out there, but this is the first one that I've heard of that's actually looking at leveraging those kind of those skills, or um, those areas of interest, right? And really helping to nurture that component of the child's identity. It's really great to hear how you're doing that. That's fantastic.
Well, thanks. So we try to take what we call, it's called in education, the andragogial approach, as opposed to a pedagogical approach, where
Mm-hmm.
we're putting the student first and we're developing the strengths. And obviously we have a curriculum and we have a pathway, but they're at the focus of it as opposed to the teacher being the focus of it, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
when you come to some of our classes, sometimes it looks like controlled chaos, in the sense that the student has control. The teacher still is guiding, facilitating, and actually educating and training, but it's not in the sense of a traditional model where it's sit down, listen to me, do what I say, follow directions. I mean, all of those kind of things, which puts it completely on the teacher to be this dictator of the classroom. We're giving
Right.
control to the client, saying, hey, for the first time, like, you have control over what you want in your life. And then the opportunities that we're providing, we like to think of as like genuine opportunity, where, in the past, organizations that do wonderful things had limited opportunities for our students in our community, in the sense it's like, okay, hey, do you want to bag groceries? Do you want to, fold envelopes, or, wrap silverware? It's like, those aren't bad things if that's what that individual wants. And if that's what they want, heck yeah, let's find a way to get them there. But if that's all that's available, that's not genuine choice. These are the three things that we quote unquote think you can do.
Right.
And, we have clients that put airbags in Audis. We have, if you drive through Denver, one of our big interstates is Highway 70. It's a
Mm-hmm.
huge project. Our students are doing the lights. We have Amazon.com buildings that our clients are building, and lift kits and Jeeps, and furnaces, and cybersecurity and accounting, and like all of these really great careers that kind of seem to kind of buck and break the norm of what our community stereotypically does.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. I love the diversity as well that you've been able to weave into the program. Did it start in a specific area and then you were able to branch out, or has the program grown, from just any specific need that arises, as a new client comes in the door?
That's a great question. It's definitely changed for sure. Honestly, when I started it, it was out of a 58 Chevy panel truck that we put on a police car frame with a Chevy 350 on, 20-inch wheels, and made it fun. We wanted to do it with style. And if you come to Tact, which you're welcome to come out anytime you'd like, um, we have a kind of certain artistic style here. We want our clients to feel like, hey, this is cool and hip. And, when people come in, a lot of times they think it looks more like Google than a traditional classroom. It's kind of fun.
Nice.
And it started with just the things that I knew to do, that I was raised to do. As a fourth generation tradesman, I was always working. I was the free labor for my dad.
Sure.
It
Yep.
was after school or summer. It wasn't like, hey, you're going to get to go home. And I'm old. There was no such thing as iPads or, cell phones, gosh, even through college. So it was like you were always outside working. And So they taught me all of these things that became the foundation of Tact. And then as we've grown, we now have, 13 people that are full-time staff that are
Hmm.
teaching these classes. And as more and more trade organizations come to us and say, hey, we see what you're doing, we have a need in this industry. We know it's not what you're currently doing, but is there a way to make it work?
Hmm.
We try to find that. So, now we have furnace companies that are hiring our kids. We've never had that before, doing this whole HVAC thing.
Yeah.
The whole electrical component, when we first started, it was started with carpentry and auto mechanics and welding. And then, electrician work was something that we thought would be fun, but and I knew how to do it to a degree, but that's vastly more complicated, in
Yeah.
depth than some of the things. And we found a way to do it. And now our, clients that work in the electrical industry, they get apprentice license, they get union voting rights, they get their construction worker license, they're getting retirement, they're getting healthcare, all of these things that are pretty amazing.
Yeah. And I imagine that there's a socializing sort of component to this as well. It's not just the skill, but how to navigate
Oh,
a workplace is
yep,
part of
absolutely.
the curriculum.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, that's one thing too that we've tried to do from the get go is making it as holistic as possible. When you look at a lot of autism groups, and there's a ton that do amazing work, a lot of
Hmm.
times it's very singularly focused and segregated in the approach, of the sense that, hey, we're going to focus on these skills one at a time. We're going to focus on interview skills. We're going to focus
Hmm.
on math skills. We're going to focus on, how do you do one thing at a time? And that's fine. But we found in an authentic real world application, if you're working in a job, you're having to problem solve multiple things
Yeah.
simultaneously. And in the trades, it kind of just naturally presents itself as an organic, holistic approach, in the sense that, hey, if you're working out in the shop and you're building a wall, there's going to be a communication component. There's a kinesthetic
Yeah.
component. There's a math component. There's a science component. There's all of these different things that you need to be able to do simultaneously. And when we first started, a lot of groups that were established looked at us like we were crazy, like, hey, our community can't do that. And it's, again, that dad approach where it's like, you don't get to tell me what my son can't do. I'm tired of hearing what my son can't do. Watch what our kids can do. And our kids rise to the occasion. And I think it's, a testament when you come to here and you see just how good the kids are at it, and you see the look in their eye. And there's no way for us to like capture just that look and enthusiasm that they have when they're given those tools for the first time, and they, succeed, and they create this amazing thing. You can see, tragically, even for some of them that are in their early 20s, that's the first time they've experienced that. And when you see it, it's just makes you realize what you're doing is worth it. It's pretty.
Yeah. I bet. I bet that's just really heartwarming to see someone be able to succeed at something they love. That's just got to be amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing you get to do that every single day. That's fantastic.
It's pretty great. I mean, there's
Yeah.
definitely, hurdles and roadblocks, and,
Sure.
as a dad, we can promote the strengths and all the great things, but I mean, it's hard work what we're doing. I mean, we're, people within our own community, we get pushback. There's employers, when we set Tact up, we were turned down for insurance 13 times. So, I mean, there's still all of these things that we're trying to overcome, but we're
Mhm.
recognizing that, hey, the things that our students are, achieving, it's worth all of it. And if you would have seen me 5 years ago, my hair was brown. And now when you look, it's gray. It's still there, thank God, but it has definitely changed colors for sure.
That's awesome. It's like you have a lot of kids that are causing your hair to turn gray. My mom used to say that I was the cause of her gray hair, and so I can imagine
Fox
with
look.
a
You and I,
whole
the silver fox look. That's what we, when we get
yeah.
older, that's what I go with. I'm just going to go with that.
Nice. That's awesome. So I heard you say that you guys rely on foundations and grants and some donations.
Mhm.
What are your growth goals? Where are you trying to go here in the next year to 5 years at
That's my
Tact?
favorite question in the whole world. And if COVID hadn't happened, I think we would have met our 5-year goals. So when we first set it up, we, sadly recognized that we're the only program like this in the country. And we
Mhm.
get people that reach out to us, and I'm not exaggerating the slightest to say all the time. I mean, like, if not daily, every other day. And because there's no one else doing this. So our goal is to absolutely take this program everywhere that we can. And in
Okay.
January of this past year, we affiliated with Easter Seals of Colorado. And the idea is that since we've affiliated with this amazing organization that has just such a huge foundation and impact in our community as the largest healthcare nonprofit in the country with over 100
Mm-hmm.
years of experience and wisdom, that they have already laid the tracks in every state across the country, that now we have this program that's so intricately integrated into Easter Seals that we can use that foundation and take our program everywhere. And that's the goal. Um,
That is
so
awesome. So you're basically franchising.
kind of on a nonprofit front type thing, right? You can do
Yeah.
and bring it
Yeah.
everywhere. And one of the hurdles and one of the core kind of values of Tact in the sense is that we want it to be attainable for anybody by using the services and the funding streams that are out there. And I feel like it's much
Mm-hmm.
easier. And I say this, I don't know this, but I would imagine it would be much easier to take a model that's fee for service to different places. But our model of making it attainable for anybody through foundations and grants and federally funded programs like the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation that have different rules and regulations in every state make taking a model like this everywhere difficult, in the sense that how do you make it attainable for families when every state has different goalposts of how to reach that funding stream? So
Right. Right. So what are you doing to attack that challenge?
that's the Easter Seals part. That's why they've
Okay.
already figured that out, which is amazing. So
Okay.
handle
Great.
all of the billing and the back end part for us. And then as we're getting the clients placed into jobs, they handle all of kind of that work adjustment training funding piece and the pre-ets and employment pieces in that regards that it's just a lot of paperwork. We also became a Medicaid approved PASA, which is a programmed approved service agency. So that allows us to take Medicaid funding as well, which is another big avenue. Anything and everything we can do to take it off of the parents' plate and just say, parents, we're with you. We are parents. I mean, that's,
Sure.
75% of our board has a child with autism or is autistic themselves. 20% of our staff as well. We're trying to genuinely walk the walk. We don't want to be a group of people that, works in an industry, but isn't actually living what we're preaching.
Right. No, that's fantastic. And I mean, it sounds to me like the awareness piece probably comes into play pretty organically through your Easter Seals connection as well.
Yes, sir. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So that's great. So you have a lot of the hurdles covered. It's just a matter of getting the programs rolled out. Are you attacking or targeting different specific areas to start? Is there what's your next community rollout?
That's a good question. So we want to go throughout the rest of the state first and really just nail that down throughout Colorado. We've identified a few different markets in regards to spots in Texas, Pennsylvania, Florida, for example, California, where organizations have really been proactive in wanting to work with us and that have a really good established Easter Seals affiliate out in those parts as well that we can work with. So that's been part of it. One of the biggest hurdles is now becoming space. As weird as that is to say, like here in Denver, for example, obviously teaching trades, you're in an industrial part of town. In Colorado, when you're in a warehouse in an industrial part of town, it's usually not trades that are happening in those warehouses anymore, which is some of the things that are legalized out here. So, and they've driven up the market of property values exponentially. So finding spots to do it, that's been really difficult to find actual spaces that can do it. And you need a lot of space. I mean, when you have, all of these different things that we've talked about, the different trades, it's a very unique space that can host that and actually do it safely. And I mean, safety is a big part of what we're teaching our students. So, that's kind of one of the hurdles. So I'm imagining that that's going to be part of the future for Danny. We'll be traveling around in adequate spaces for our programming. So we'll see it.
Yeah, I remember even 5 years ago or more now, people talking about how warehouse space, the cost per square foot has just gone through the
Oh,
roof.
it's
Um,
insane.
and here in the Denver and Colorado area. So I can understand that challenge for
Yeah.
sure.
We had, so you're from Colorado as well then? Awesome,
Yes.
fantastic.
Yep.
Okay, I apologize for my
Yeah.
ignorance that I didn't realize that. So we
No,
were
that's
in Rhino at first, the arts district, and we had this
mhm.
beautiful, old, just horribly dilapidated, just falling apart warehouse that I just loved dearly. And anyway, it had like no heat. We shared a bathroom with a garage. I mean, um, it was just terrible, but it was also so wonderful in the same
Right.
token. And it was just kind of our home. It was our start. And it ended up selling. It made the cover of the Denver Business Journal for $38 million. And it's just like,
Wow.
how does something with no heat sell for $38 million? It's just crazy. I don't know how nonprofits like us are supposed to attain those kind of things without support. So
Yeah, it's a really interesting time. My guess is that right now it might be a little easier in some parts of the city. Just as a lot of the co-working spaces and things like that have kind of had to pull back, I think. But it's still an interesting real estate market for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, that is the truth.
And
That is the truth. Yeah. That's
yeah,
going to be something that we're
and
attempting. That's a hurdle that we're trying to overcome. I mean, we're hoping for a new space that's about triple the size we are right now, just because there's so
okay,
many students too. I mean, that's the thing with 1 in 54 people with autism being diagnosed. It's a whole group of people out there that need something like our program. And right
mhm,
now, we just don't have the capacity with our size. So, the space itself is limiting how many people we can reach. So as we
right.
grow and, with these still support and, people that are listening to this and decide they want to support us, that's one thing we need is just bigger space for sure.
Yeah. So are you trying to drive donations so that you can afford larger space, or are you looking to try to get, maybe some foundation or partnership agreements that allow you to even purchase a space here in
All of
Denver?
the above. All of the above.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the nice thing, if somebody chooses to donate to us and support us, they absolutely have the right to say, hey, I would like these funds to go to X, Y, and Z. So, like, I want to support you guys finding a new space. Please use this money towards that.
Okay.
Grants a lot of times are restricted funds in the sense that it goes specifically towards programs. We have a very
Yep.
transparent budget. Anybody can find our 990, see how honest we are with our funds. We always want to make sure that we're being authentic with that. If somebody donates money, we want it, or grantor gives us money, we're trying to use it for
Hmm.
what it's intended to use. We absolutely are doing
Yeah.
that. So it doesn't leave us much wiggle room to save up crazy amounts of money to buy fancy buildings in this market. So we need support like that for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting with grants. There's restricted and unrestricted,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Mm-hmm.
you sometimes have to. I mean, you always have to use the restricted grant funding the way it was intended. At least that's my
Absolutely. Absolutely.
understanding.
And
So,
we're fortunate in the sense that because we do genuinely do what we tell people we're going to do, we have a lot of foundations that support us year over year, which has been wonderful. And we're
mhm.
really grateful for that support.
Yeah, that's great. I heard you say trade groups earlier. Are there potential opportunities there to engage with trade groups and have them come on as potential sponsors or large
Heck
donors?
yeah. I mean, that's the goal. A lot of our
Hmm.
contractors that work with us, when I say contractor, I mean like companies that do contractor work, like electrical companies or construction,
Hmm.
they also a lot of times have foundations that then donate to us as well, which has been just fantastic. But as we're looking at that, we need that support. Like, so for example, Skills USA, which is a big trade group, they do all the standards for nationally for high school and transitional age kids. So like that, 14 to 21 age group. When we first became a
Okay.
member of that organization, we became the only ADA compliant chapter of it. And it's just wild to think, kind of like I was saying, we're the only group doing this. It's 2021. How are we the only ones that are like truly inclusive? That's wild to think. So
Yeah, that is kind of an amazing fact there. Gosh, you would think that the more people would be compliant at this point,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
guess not.
Well, I mean, a big part of what we're doing at Tact is just explaining what, inclusion and neurodiversity looks like too. I mean, it's, when you go out and you talk to people, you will regularly meet somebody that, has a child with autism or family member, a neighbor. 1 to 54 people, you don't have to look too far before you recognize that, individuals with autism are throughout our entire community. But people
Right. Yep.
still, look at it in the sense that it's like this hidden group that they don't recognize as a group that's underserved or not recognizing the full ability of their potential.
Yeah, I think there's still an awful lot of just misunderstanding or just ignorance around what autism and being on the spectrum means and is for
Absolutely.
people. And it's refreshing. And I think this is how we may have met was I believe I saw one of your posts on LinkedIn talking about it. And it was just refreshing to know that more and more people are able to talk about it and be willing to talk about it, as well as just having the language around it and creating that understanding. So my suspicion is that you are really well connected in kind of the autism arena. So getting the word out that you exist is sounding like it's fairly organic and natural for you.
Yes, sir.
Is that
Yes, sir. I'd
correct?
say that's accurate for sure.
Okay, so you don't have any lack of students applying or interested in your
No,
programs.
we have definitely things we need to achieve. There's students all the time that are reaching out. In fact, we have a waiting
Mhm.
list of students. So, the space is the biggest limiting factor at this space. I mean, spacing and funding, in the sense that
Mhm.
we need a bigger space so we can host more students for sure.
Gotcha. How many kids have gone through the program
We're
to
coming up on
date?
800.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing. That's great. Um, and are most of them, or I guess you said all of them are scholarship? Is that
That's
accurate?
pretty
Or
accurate. The only difference that I should clarify, and I appreciate you bringing that up, is our introductory classes, which we have like workshops on the weekends, and they're kind of like drop-ins where people can come in and be, exposed. They're $25 a
Mhm.
class, so it's
Okay.
not. We try to make it where it's not out of reach, and then we use those as kind of a feeder program in the sense that we want kids to come get experienced, exposed, and then they go back to their school wherever they're at and say, hey, I'm really having fun at Tact doing trades. This is what I want to do. I want to be an auto mechanic. I want to be a welder. Then the
Uh-huh.
school, the idea says, okay, well, let's create a pathway for you to do that. And it gets written into like their education plan. And if the school does not
Okay.
have the means to do that, and sadly, there is no means to do that in most schools, as they've cut all kinds of trades programs out of the schools,
Right.
then they have to say, okay, well, let's send you to Tact. And they do. And so when you are in our parking lot, we have school buses from over 8 different districts around the Denver area where people are being dropped off. And it's been fantastic to see kids just dropped off from everywhere coming here. And then
Right.
they get high school credit for it, where they actually are getting elective credit for our program. And it's directly related to them getting a job. And the cool thing is, there's no debt for them. So when they place into this
Right.
job, they're making, say $20 an hour. Our average is actually a little bit over that, what our clients make with no
Right.
debt. And you're a 20-year-old kid. Heck, you're way
Right.
ahead of the game. There are so many people that, go to college and get $250,000 in debt. And for our
Yeah.
community, if, you're an individual with autism and you go to college, that it only increases your unemployment stats about 5 to 6%. So it's, oh geez, now I'm 84% unemployed versus 90%. I mean, is that worth
Right.
$250,000 plus? I would personally say
Right.
no. I think,
Right.
what we're offering is genuine opportunity if that's something that somebody wants.
Yeah, it's great. And are those kids coming just for some period of time during the day? They take a regular high school program during the majority of the day, and then they come to you for a couple hours
That's
of
correct.
work.
Absolutely. Yep. So
Is
they're
that
getting the kind of
okay?
those core things, math, science,
Hmm.
history things at their, comprehensive high school. For those that have
Okay.
already graduated high school and are older than 21 into their 30s, they're just coming here and they're getting that skills training. But again, by being
Okay.
so holistic, there's so much more than that. So I would never say it's just carpentry, just
Right.
welding. I mean, they're getting social skills, they're getting job development skills, they're creating resumes and portfolios and getting interviews and all of those things that, when I was at least in high school, that we took out, right? I mean, there was like a class where you learned how to write a check and how to interview and all those different things. It comes naturally in all of this.
That's great. And then they also get access to these trade organizations potentially who might have job placement opportunities for them just straight out of your
100%
program.
correct. Absolutely. And that's what we're doing is then we take that and since we've developed these relationships with these employers, they recognize that candidates coming out of Tact are qualified. So it's not the circumstance. We're very fortunate in that sense where an employer hires one. It's like, okay, thank you. It's usually like, I hired one. They were fantastic. How many more do you got? They can come work for you. And
That's
so that's a
awesome.
good place to be.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, so I'm thinking that there might be opportunities in terms of, I mean, you don't have a challenge with getting students engaged. Sounds like that's taken care of pretty handily at this point. But in terms of driving donations, it feels like there's probably some opportunity for awareness there that you might be able to tap into, where you just start telling this story about just some of these stats, like the ones that you've shared with me in terms of 90% unemployment rate for people in the autism spectrum, et cetera. And then building case studies around your success metrics and getting those stories out there to really start to try and drive donations from people who are interested in trying to help out in this space. That and this education angle, in my mind, are two places where there's probably opportunity for you to build more awareness. You don't have to necessarily create the content from scratch in terms of going out and doing a ton of research and building out a research paper, but sharing that information when it comes to light and enabling people to really get a good understanding for the severity of this problem and how you are helping these kids kind of navigate this space.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that. We just did a presentation this week with another organization, and they had a way that they approached it, which I thought was really clever in the sense that they demonstrated the economic impact that their program was having.
Yep.
We've never approached it in that regards, but to put it in scale, the average, family that was raising a child with a neurotypical child, it's roughly $250,000 to raise that child. For that same family or a family with a child that's neurodiverse, it costs roughly about $2.2 million to raise that child. So if they can't afford that, then it goes to taxpayer dollars that end up paying it. So there, people in the community and just city in general, or the nation in general, realize that or not, they're paying for it because the families can't support it. So our taxpayer dollars are going to that. So if you look at the fact that we're getting people jobs, 90% of them, unfortunately are ending up in day programs in their parents' basement, and taxpayer dollars are doing that. So millions of dollars are going to that. You could look at the fact, you take 10 kids that we get employed, and my gosh, $2.2 million times 10 kids, all of a sudden,
that's $20 million.
Pretty big
impact.
Economic impact on the community.
Yeah.
It's an avenue we've never approached it before, but we're really wondering, like, hey, will that start getting people to be like, oh my gosh, like this is a big deal. Like they're actually having a substantial impact.
So I was talking about something about story building and how to leverage other materials, perhaps, so you don't have to do all the research yourself, that are just all about kind of the economic impacts and things like that about autism, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. So let's kind of keep that conversation going, and then we'll just kind of wrap things up, I guess. Does that sound okay?
Sounds good. Yeah. So we were discussing the one presentation that I was just at recently, where I heard the one group discuss kind of the economic impact that they were having, and that looking at our organization, we never really tried to focus on the fact that despite, a family with a neurodiverse child spends about $2.2 million, what that impact looks like every time we get them a job. But that if you use 10 kids, for example, getting them jobs, it's $20 million. That's a pretty substantial economic impact that we hadn't really considered before.
Yeah. And as you try to reach out to people and get aligned with their motivations and their challenges and the things that you are providing that help them out, even if they don't have a child with autism, or they're not affected in the way that many people are, really enabling them to get a good understanding of how this particular challenge affects all of us, and how just getting these kids into good paying jobs can have such a huge economic impact on the community.
It does. And I think, we want a community that's fully inclusive and then recognizes that the autism community has value and has a unique perspective that, enhances everybody's life. I mean, the things that they bring to the table, are just, gosh, how do you even bring it up? You look at, people that have contributed to history in the past. You look at the fact that the wealthiest man in the world right now is on the spectrum himself. Like, what would the world look like without these individuals? Or if they're just put into a basement or a day treatment center.
These are the ones that have managed to figure out how to bring their unique talents to the masses.
They broke through.
Do that more, right?
Exactly. We need more opportunities. We need more people that recognize and are willing to look at the strengths. And I think it takes our, culture and our society as a whole to start recognizing the ability that people have, highlighting that ability, and stop looking for reasons to say no and start looking for reasons to say yes. We have, people that can do amazing things that are being overlooked because of a singular word before even given the opportunity. And that stereotype and that kind of stigma that is placed on an individual based on labels that people that aren't dealing with it themselves place. No one gains from that. Nobody wins from that.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's amazing the work that you guys are doing and facilitating and enabling, these kids and young adults and adults as well. It sounds like you're helping out people of almost all ages, really figure out and gain access to the type of I'll call it work, but it's like that old quote, you won't work a day in your life if you do something that you love. But enabling them to gain access to these things that they love, that they can bring not only to the community, but to their families, and then to their own pocketbooks as well. So it's just such a triple whammy there that you guys are providing. It's great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It feels like on some days we're winning, some days we're not. So on the good days, that's what it feels like. So thank you. I feel like I appreciate it.
That's awesome. Well, how can people find out more about Tact? How can people get involved or donate or just learn more about about your programs?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking. So our website is builtwithtact.org. I would encourage anybody to visit our website. We're also on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, those kind of things. So I think there's even an Instagram picture or account out there somewhere. So all those different people can, I've encouraged people to go and look. One of the things we like to do is showcase the actual work of all of our clients. So there's pictures where you can see, hey, this is quality, genuinely well-crafted, good stuff that they're doing. And these are the kind of things that, our community whole needs more people that have these skills. Yeah. So even if you're just supporting that whole trades version of it, we want people to recognize that our kids are pretty amazing, and we want them to start seeing that for who they are.
That's great. So one question I neglected to ask earlier in terms of the economic impact is, what's a scholarship valued? What would it cost for someone to sponsor a scholarship for a kid at Tact?
Great question. So the way that we've looked at it is we took the average private school tuition at Denver, broke it down per credit, as well as what federal funding pays, and it actually works out to about the same. So for a semester of classes, it works out roughly to about $5,700.
Okay.
So scholarship for a semester of Tact programming works out to that. The fact, if you think about that, 'cause that's a big number, the fact that none of our kids are paying that is a testament to how much we hustle and to try to work with different grants and foundations so that that becomes feasible and possible. Because again, if you're already spending $100,000 per year on your child for random services that are great and valuable, not to put them down, like another $5,000. I mean, that's, in Denver, that's a month's rent, right? Or sadly, it shouldn't be, but it seems like it's getting headed that way.
Right.
Yeah, we're trying to make it attainable.
That's great. That's amazing. If you look at that in terms of that economic impact that we've been talking about, we're $5,700 for a semester, and obviously you have kids for multiple semesters and you're
right.
Things, but when you look at that $2 million impact, that's a drop in the bucket.
Thank you. And, again, that's a way that we haven't looked at it. But to your point, like if you're spending, just over $11,000 for 2 semesters, and all of a sudden you saved taxpayers and families $2 million, that's one heck of a return on an investment. Absolutely. That, other organizations. So I would encourage you to consider it.
Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation today and learning more about Tact and what you're up to and how you're helping the autism community really be able to navigate the world more effectively and be able to fulfill what they're out there capable of being is just fantastic. And I love having these conversations. One of the things I like to ask at the end of every show is, how can people take action? So if there was one thing that you would want people to do, whether that's, go for a hike or ride a bike or, whatever it is, what would you have people do today to take some sort of action to make the world a better place?
Gosh, that is one of the best questions I've ever gotten in a I love that question. I would almost say it's different depending upon who I'm asking. If you're talking to an employer, I would say, hey, actually open up your interviewing process or your recruiting process to actually consider an individual with autism. If you're a parent, I would say, hey, look at programs out there like Tact that are recognizing strengths, and don't be afraid of these things that are getting your kids dirty. I mean, our kids they get dirty. They're working on cars. They're working with welding. They, fail, then they succeed. I think that we need to provide more opportunities for kids to flourish and actually feel what it's like to win when they're genuinely working for something. So it's not that it's a handout, it's that it's an opportunity for them to experience genuine success. And I would hope that more parents and more community members would get behind us and support that idea.
I love it. That's just a fantastic action item. Again, Danny, thank you for bearing with some technical challenges that,
it's all good.
That may show up here on the show. And thank you for being part of the show today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Bye.
And there you have it, another great episode of Relish This. Thanks again for listening. You can find past episodes of the show at relishthis.org. And remember, if you liked what you heard today, please subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information on purpose marketing, grab your free copy of my book, Mission Uncomfortable: How Nonprofits Can Embrace Purpose-Driven Marketing to Survive and Thrive. Get your copy now at missionuncomfortablebook.com. Thanks again for listening. Come back next week, won't you?